this building, coming and going from school every day. My parents lived just over there, down in Woodbine. I was actually interviewed for the principalship of Oaklands in this building in 1986, before a lot of people in this room were born. Yeah, so retired in 2019, and then was asked by Standard Life a couple of months later to do what I'm going to do with you today. And what it really is when you step away from that day job, that sense of personal identity, and you have worked with Owen, and you've got a good pension, and your financial prospects are good, and your health is good, please God, the question then is, who are you, and what do you want to do with your life? Lots of people, they have the bucket list. Yeah, sure. Do the cruise. Do the things on the bucket list. But 6 months later, they're done. So who are you now? And what's the purpose? So what I'm going to talk to you today about is rediscovering yourself in retirement. In Standard Life, we research constantly from our client base and look at people and talk to them about retirement. And when we do, we discovered in our last research in 2023 that only 32% of people actually feel prepared for retirement, which when you think about it is less than a third. 47% of people feel confident that they're making the most of their pension. And 40% of women are concerned they won't be able to retire. 33% of married men feel they may not be able to retire. So there's a lot of uncertainty in people's lives around retirement. It's amazing the number of people who retire and never have a conversation with their life partner about the implications of that. They arrive home the day after they finish work and expect that somehow the whole domestic environment is going to readjust itself to facilitate them, and often discover that their partner may say to them when they ask that simple question, what are we doing today? I don't know what you're doing. I'm doing what I always do on a Tuesday, blah, 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 which can be an awful shock to the system. So there's 2,000 additional hours, and that's only work-related hours, that suddenly get freed up when you retire. So the question that arises is, not only who are you, but what do you do with all that time? And we've all seen examples of people who live dynamic, healthy, working lives, and within a year or two of retirement, they're gone. We've all seen it. And what is it? Why is it that even though they have financial resources, they've planned well, they've been to their financial advisor earlier in life, they've done all the financial planning, but they find that even though they have adequate financial resources, their life seems to have become totally detached in a sense. They're drifting, and they can't figure out, why is it that even though I've done everything right, that I'm in this scenario, or that 68% of them don't feel prepared for this retirement process? Because the question that they have to ask themselves is, when they step away from that sense of personal identity, who am I? Because for a huge number of people, when you ask that question, they tell you what they do. I'm an accountant, I'm an engineer, I'm a teacher, I'm a bus driver, whatever. Because that sense of personal identity can often be, it's simple. The question is, who are you? Can often be answered by what I do. So if you retire and you ask the question the day after, who are you? What's the answer? And it's a scary question for a lot of people. And that's why they don't have the conversation with the life partner. That's why they don't think about it. Because ultimately, to think about raises huge issues of identity and purpose. So retirement, if you actually think about the word retirement, what the hell does it actually mean? I mean, retirement as a concept was introduced in the 19th century by Bismarck in Germany when he put in place a pension system for those who reached 70 years of age, so that the state would keep people who got to that stage from being in dire poverty. Now, given that the life expectancy of most people in 1900, which was 30 years later, was 55, pensions payable at 70 was more of a conceptual reality than an actual reality. And even when we reduced to 65, with life expectancy in the high 50s, again, from a national financial point of view, it wasn't a particularly heavy burden. Now, as Owen said to you, with life expectancy of 90 plus now, retirement at 65 means that effectively you've got 25 plus years of hopefully healthy living. I live up the road here at the top of Foster's Avenue, and I spend, at the moment, no more than 50 days a year there, because the other 290 days or whatever, I spend down in the Hinch, in what was a holiday home, and is now basically where I live most of the time with my wife. And the reason she's living down there, because her mother's in a local nursing home, and her mother's 102, going on 103. And therefore, from a retirement perspective, she has 38 years done and is heading for her 40 years in retirement on top of 40 years of living. So what does retirement mean? If you think of life expectancy and healthy life expectancy, what do we mean by the word retirement? And yet it's embedded into our consciousness. I do a lot of work in the educational space, and European education policy, is lifelong ending at 65. Lifelong ending at 65. And you go, yeah, well, everything ends at 60. It doesn't end at 65. 65 is simply the beginning, as we say in standard life, of your second life. And it is a process. It's a process of change. It's a transition. It's not the flick of a switch. And it has to be, because ultimately, if you are going to have those 30 years, hopefully, of healthy living, what is actually happening in retirement? Okay, so you had a job, or you have a job, and it is a contract which gives you a pension, mandatory in some cases, although hopefully not in too many cases, flexible in other cases, whereby at the end of a period of time, you get your lump sum and you get an investment either in terms of an income, guaranteed income, or a capacity to invest and give you a guaranteed income. That's what it is. It's a financial transaction, but it doesn't define you as a person. So you need to be flexible and you need to be open and adaptable to ask yourself the question, what does that process and the initiation of that process mean to me personally? I'm 5 years into it now, and to me, it is the freedom to choose. In other words, if you're in a job, you have certain commitments, and your choices in terms of what you do with life are defined by when you're on holidays or when you're on time off or whenever, when you're not committed to your work. Retirement has given me the freedom to choose, right? So when Standard Life asked me to do this work that I'm doing with you this morning, I chose to do it. And we work in terms of planning when we are doing particular events. I write for the Irish Times. I have a column every Tuesday. I choose when I write those columns. I also choose if I get parents still coming to me, asking me to help them with their children's CAO applications. I can choose to do this or whatever. But if I choose to take a break, take a holiday, whatever, then that's my freedom. That's what retirement has given me. The freedom to be able to choose and to be able to look at the world through a new lens, through what that freedom gives me. I'm also a therapist. It was part of what my training in terms of guidance counselling. I got into guidance counselling. And William Glasser, the founder of reality therapy, said that we have 5 basic needs as human beings. That everything that we do, all our actions, all our thoughts, everything can in some way be associated with these 5 needs. Starting over on the right-hand side is survival. Why are we still here as a species? Because ultimately we are driven to survive. We run from the bear, and we have our sexuality, which determines that there are children to carry on the species to the next generation. Survival is probably not particularly relevant to retirement, particularly the survival bit in terms of surviving of the species. But the other 4 very much are. And working from the left, belonging, in other words, relationships. How important are the relationships in our life? And the question that arises is, how many of our relationships that really matter to us have developed and grown and are actually rooted in our working identity? How many of the people we really enjoy spending time with are people we relate to work? And if you step away from that role, that job, what is your link to any of these people? And if it is only to work, are you going to be that surprised when literally that phone stops ringing because those people are not in your working space or you're not in their working space anymore? Which can often drive people in a panic, and you see it constantly, of dropping by after work, dropping into the office, dropping in whatever, because they're struggling with, how do I relate to the people I want to relate to? But after you've left is not the time to be figuring that one out. The time to be figuring that one out is long before you retire, maybe in that 5 years. And if you identify people in your life, you ask yourself the question, how do I maintain my relationship with that person outside the working environment? Okay, what are the things we enjoy doing? Can we organize that we do those things independently of the working environment? We go hill walking at the weekend, or we have particular sporting activity we enjoy together, and establish ways of doing that that don't depend on your being in the work environment. Because that's what's often driving their dropping by, because the person suddenly discovers the phone has stopped ringing, the people I thought were my friends were in fact my work colleagues, and I saw them as my friends, but effectively it was all predicated and dependent on the fact that we were going to the same location for the last 30 or 40 years together. And we didn't actually ever think beyond that in terms of maintaining that relationship. The next need is empowerment. We all need to have a sense within ourselves of that who am I question. I suppose it gives us a sense of personal confidence in that we've done well, we've worked hard, we've established ourselves as whatever it is we are. And it's very much a sense of personal satisfaction or contentment. But given how society regards you're at work one day and the next day you're retired, I had a case that I spoke to somebody a year or two about this, who was an extremely skilled surgeon. Went to the theatre every day, had a complete team around them, anaesthetists, nurses, whatever, top of their profession. But because of the nature of insurance and contracts, etc., on a particular day when they got to a particular birthday, 65 or whatever, they are no longer legally protected to go into the theatre the following day, therefore they're gone. Suddenly, a highly skilled surgeon can't operate anymore. And the question then is, that sense of personal empowerment they got by walking in their scrubs down the corridor and everybody says, oh, there's Mr. whatever, suddenly the following day, who the hell are you? In terms of your sense of personal empowerment. You're just a guy. Suddenly that whole sense of personal empowerment is gone. And so much of it is tied up in that working identity. So if you're going to find yourself in that situation, How do you develop a sense of personal identity, which is often why people get involved in community work or voluntary activity or whatever, that they can actually establish for themselves an identity beyond that working identity, even in parallel to the working identity, so that effectively, when they leave the day job, they still have a sense of personal empowerment, a sense of, well, I do this, or this is who I am now, or that's what I've done in my life. You know? We were looking, many of us looked at David Putman's program last night, you know what I mean? He was talking about retiring and retirement from the House of Lords, his Irish citizenship, etc. That's all part of the process of life, of going on and establishing a new sense of identity, a new sense of personal purpose in life. We all have a sense of freedom. It can be driven by the income we have. It can be driven by the opportunities that our working life gives us, travel, etc. And again, that freedom to do all of those things can often be associated with what our working life has allowed us to do. And if we step away from that working life, again, the question is, how do we express that sense of personal freedom within our own lives? How many of us have activities, whether it's the summer barbecue, or whether it's the Christmas party, or whether it's, you know, a weekend golf activity or whatever? How much of us, or how many of us have a lot of what we consider fun in our lives directly or indirectly related for stuff that is generated by our working identity within the organizations we work for? Think about it. You've worked with Owen, you've made the financial plans, you retire, you haven't thought through the process beyond the financial planning. You're at home the day after, you're looking at the gifts you got on your retirement party last night. And suddenly, those 4 needs, which are part of you, you have no realization that effectively the dynamic of all of those has been radically transformed by the fact that you're no longer the accountant, you're no longer going to work, your day is no longer structured, and your year is no longer structured the way it's been for the last 40 years. All of that has suddenly ended for you, and you're looking, well, I have plenty of money, and within a couple of weeks and a couple of months, you're feeling miserable. And you're going, what the hell's wrong? I have plenty of money. What's wrong? Because effectively, if we only think of the financial planning and the aspect that Owen was talking about, and we don't address all of this, then the money may be sitting there, but we won't be a happy bunny. So, what we have to acknowledge is that even though we've spent an entire lifetime acquiring the skills that we have as part of our working identity, that the traditional retirement concept has to be redundant. We're not dying at 55 as we would have been back in 1900. We are living, and there are people living beyond the 100 on a regular basis now. So retirement at 65 can be just that. Get the lump sum, take the 25%, invest the rest, and then look at what you want to do with your life. You may decide you don't want to work anymore. You may decide that you want to get involved in community activities. You may decide you just want to play golf, although playing golf every day is not particularly attractive. But I mean, well, some people it may be, whatever, but you know, you may decide that you want to maybe go to 2 days a week. You may decide that you want to wind down and maybe take a part-time role. Or you may decide that you still have an awful lot to offer. You have a vast reservoir of skills and wisdom which you've built up over your entire life, through both your family life, your social life, your working life, etc. You may have spent your life, and hopefully you have, in a job that you absolutely loved. But people who are retiring today started working in the late 70s and in the 80s. Ireland was a pretty grim place in the 80s. There was an awful lot of people left the country because employment opportunities were very poor. As I said to you, I taught up in Oakland. I got a job there in '77. 1 or 2 other people got jobs in '78. I don't think any new member staff came on staff for about 12 years. for 12 years. It was like, the 80s for me were a time when it was like, same group of people, every single year coming back. The age profile was such that nobody really retired. And when you think about that, we were very fortunate we had jobs, but an awful lot of people left the country, an awful lot of people found that there were no opportunities. And an awful lot of people who got jobs may have got jobs in places and in roles where they were very fortunate, but it may not have been a total expression of who they were inside. It may not have been an opportunity for them to really express that sense of personal drive which came from their unique sense of talents and skills. And they may have been sitting there for 40 years. Now they're retiring, they've got the lump sum, they've got the pension, they've survived, they've raised a family, they've put kids through college, and now they have a lot of skills and wisdom, but they may also have an opportunity uniquely to actually discover stuff inside themselves that they've always wanted to do but never had an opportunity, or that was there and they've lost awareness of it. I, for my sins, also chair a further education college board of management here in Rediscovering. I do one down in Blackrock as well, and out in Sallylog. I haven't asked for any of this, I've been asked to do it, I do it. We have some really interesting programs. We have a program up in Rediscovering where we have a tour guiding course. It's a 1-year course. It can be a second year if you want to go on to do level 6. The average age of the students is 65, and they're all retirees, and they're having a ball. They do a couple of days a week, taking the Americans around Dublin or taking them on playing golf courses around the country, etc. We have people doing courses in photography, we have people doing courses in art, we have people doing courses in IT, who want to get involved in either community-based activities or doing other stuff, or maybe even getting back into the employment market, but they feel they've got a skills deficit with all this new IT, modern IT stuff. So they didn't need in their existing job, but they now need it in a new role. And therefore they're using their existing skills, they're doing part-time training or courses, etc., and they're relaunching themselves, doing stuff. And as I said earlier in relation to myself, they're doing it because they have the choice. They have that personal choice. They can take time away from it, they can give as much as they want to it, but they have the freedom to do it on their own terms. You may feel that you currently live a very purposeful life, but in a sense, you need to change gear. You need to go from the manual to the automatic. You need to reimagine yourself. You need to reimagine what it is. You may have hopes and dreams, as I said, stuff that die in the reality of what normally working life, that you now have the freedom to choose. And as I said, possibly going back, taking a part-time course or something might be a route to actually that reimagination of self, that sense of looking at who I am. Because in truth, the question, who I am, when you step away from the day job, can often be a question of crisis of identity. But I'm standing here in front of you today, I was 70 a couple of months ago. I'm working as hard now as I want to work. I have a variety of roles, what I'm doing here with Standard Life and my writing for the Times. I also edit an education publication, and I see some students who come to me and look for a bit of advice. I manage the whole supervision program for guidance counselling in Ireland for the Department of Education on a voluntary basis. But I take time out, and I live most of the time in the Hinch, and I walk the beach every day, and I stay fit, and I choose to do what I want to do. And therefore, I am using my retirement to recreate a sense of personal identity and to give myself a sense of purpose and drive and ambition. And I don't see work in terms of finance. Thankfully, I don't feel that I'm doing this because I need more money. I'm doing it because it still gives me that sense when I wake up every morning. And that's what you're looking for. That when I wake up every morning, I woke up this morning really looking forward to meeting you guys today and working with you and helping to explore some of these issues. And every day I wake up and I have that sense of drive and energy and purpose. And that's what you're looking for. You don't want to find yourself at 66 wondering, what the hell, why am I getting out of bed today? Because your health, your mental health, your physical health, all of that is going to be affected by that sense of identity. If you don't have something to drive you, it could be your grandchildren, it could be a sense of commitment to your local community, it could be anything, but you've got to find something that gives you that long-term energy so that you can go through your 70s or 80s or 90s or whatever and still feel that sense of personal vibrancy, that sense of energy. And from a societal point of view, and I've had discussions at governmental level with this, do we want a society in which we say to all of us at 65, go on there now in the corner and sit down and, just, vegetate away, and we'll be looking after you, all the working population will be supporting you? Or do we want to say at 65 to people, this is just a transition phase, we still value you as a member of the community, we value you as a member of society, we will invest in your re-education, we will invest in your positive health, mental health, physical health, preventative health. We are going to structure our society so that everybody, so long as they are healthy and vibrant, that they are as valued in our community, no matter what age they are. And I think the second one is a far more healthy way of having the quality of society we all want to live in. And I think government policy needs to reflect that and not see 65 as somehow, well, they're in some dark place beyond the rest of our working lives. And the community is inclusive of everybody, even people who are 102. You know what I'm saying? That they're still valued and part of our community. So, if you look at maintaining that sense of what do I need today to be fully who I am, whether it is going to retrain or finding work that is fulfilling but not committing yourself full-time or committing you as much as you want to be, or getting involved in your community. But getting those skills means that your employability options continue. If you want to continue work and you want to continue to earn, you're using the skills that you have through life and the ones that you acquire as you go on, and you can transfer them to another activity in life of your own choosing. You are feeling that sense of personal vibrancy, that sense of personal fulfillment, that sense of drive and ambition. So there's a kind of a personal renaissance going on in your own life the whole time. Because what we have, if you think about it, if you work with Owen and you invest in Standard Life and other investments, you may have that fully functioning car sitting in the driveway. But if you don't have any idea what you want to do with it, it just sits in the driveway and you're going nowhere. So it's a question of figuring out that map, figuring out what it is you want to do with your life. So let's try and summarize what I've been trying to say to you here this morning. Firstly, you need to plan your time. You're sitting here today, most of you are still working, most of you are still totally embedded in that sense of personal identity of what you're doing in your life at the moment. So you have time on your side, so use the time. Have that conversation at home. Have that conversation about what are we going to do beyond that moment when maybe both of you are retired. Or what are the things we would both like to do in our lives, and have that conversation. You might be absolutely shocked and surprised when you have that conversation with a life partner and begin to struggle with it a bit. But if you're doing this 4 or 5 years out from retirement, that's fine. Let it evolve. Let it gradually evolve in that conversation between you. So there won't be that moment of, I'm doing what I always did, goodbye, to figure it out for yourself. What does the ideal day look like for you on the other side of retirement? Now, it may be a bit speculative if you're 5 or 10 years out, but at least begin to grapple with that. So start building up other interests beyond, if you are so embedded in your job. And one of the things, we did some filming of some interviews that myself and my professional partner in the work I do here, who's Sonia Lennon, we did some interviews last year with retirees that we filmed. And one of the things that came through was a regret sometimes among people who retired, particularly men, that they didn't have the time with their children when they were in their 40s. They were so embedded in the job and building the career that they never really got the time to enjoy their own children. And they are really enjoying their grandchildren now, because they see now that, maybe their eye was so focused on the career that they didn't really invest in those relationships. And they were just enjoying their grandkids. Perfect. Absolutely fine. If that's what you want to do, go and do it. I'm sure your kids would be more than happy to have doing all the babysitting, whatever. But be careful that you don't get locked into something that you can't get out of. Okay, start building up the interests and plotting out what are you going to do, with the time, that 2,000 hours. And begin, it is speculative, but if you begin to start thinking about it and grappling with it, however mucky that may seem, gradually as you begin to approach retirement, at least you are formulating a new vision of self as you move along. That network of connectivity and networking, if it is all work related, begin to expand it. If there are people in your life that you really want to maintain a relationship with, find ways of actually initiating activities that are not dependent on the working relationship, so that a month afterwards, it's not an awkward conversation to ring somebody and say, okay, are we doing this next weekend? That effectively separate out those important relationships from the dependency of it only happening in a working relationship environment. And if your phone stops ringing, I remember once speaking to a guy who retired, and he was right at the top of the Garda Síochána, and he was in charge of Dublin. And he said, my phone rang 24 hours a day, murders, bank robberies, whatever it is. And he said, the day after I retired, I'm looking at the phone, and it's dead. And I suddenly realized that my entire 24 hours of activity was all work related. But the phone has a capacity to, you make a call. And if you find yourself that, you're looking at your phone and you're wondering, why is nobody ringing me anymore? You need to use that phone to maybe pick up the phone and say hello to somebody, because they may welcome that call. Scary as it may seem, they may welcome that, and maybe make those calls, as I said, before you suddenly find yourself in a situation where they're not ringing you anymore. Because, let's be honest, as you progress through your working life, you acquire seniority, hopefully. And as you require seniority, you have people who work to you. And if their career progression is dependent on your goodwill, they may seem to you your best friends, and they laugh at all your jokes, and they're all, they're there for you. And then the day you step out of that office, they're no longer on your career ladder, and suddenly you realize they weren't as deep friends as I thought they were. So effectively, figure out who your real friends are and build those relationships and build those contacts and make that connectivity. The relationships, as I say, it just doesn't affect you. It affects everyone in your personal life. Your partner, your children, the people who are there outside your working environment. Have that conversation. Figure out how it is that whole part of your life is going to work when you have that freedom and those extra 2,000 hours, commuting hours, etc. And look at today. Look at the beautiful weather we have here. Look at this beautiful environment we're in. Effectively, retiring at the moment gives you such freedom to do so many different things and to go to so many different places. Retiring in January, well, it's dark, it's wet outside. You're kind of hibernating for 3 or 4 months. Do you really want to bring the end of your working life at a time when you're sitting looking at the wall for 4 months? Maybe the time of year that you retire affects the quality of how you make that transition. So, a settling in period, a realization beforehand that this is what you're getting into. And be sure, as I say, to mark this retirement. It is a celebration. You've given 35, 40 years, whatever, to a particular profession. You may continue on in some capacity or you may choose to step away, but it is a celebration. You have achieved a huge amount for yourself personally, for your family, for your own sense of professional identity. Celebrate that. So, how do we start? How do we start this journey? How do we start this journey from your present reality of your working life to the reality of what it would be like when you go through that end of the current employment contract, whatever it is. Start the conversation. In Standard Life, we have a questionnaire called the Second Life Questionnaire. Owen can provide it to you. It has a series of questions which will enable you, I think you have it there, it has a series of questions, if you look at it, which trigger all of the stuff that I've been talking about this morning. You know? Think about it. The reason Owen is putting this on for you today is to give you that chance to think about it. He will look after you financially. Standard Life will look after you, Owen, in terms of the investment opportunities through Vanguard and other options. But you are going to have to figure out, beyond that financial planning, how you are going to reimagine yourself. And the Second Life Questionnaire is hugely helpful in doing that. So take your time over the next 5, 10, whatever number of years. You know, rinse and repeat, reflect, discuss, think, possibly consider doing some part-time course. But one thing I would associate in terms of the colleges that I'm involved in managing is a lot of students are doing different things. Some people are doing one-year PLCs because they want to get into the CAO, they want to get into law or commerce or science or whatever. Some people are doing one-year courses because they want to get into hair and beauty or fire and ambulance or whatever. And they're all, you know, starting out in life. And then there's this gang of people in their 60s, and they're having fun. They're actually having fun. And they're the heart and soul of the actual college. And they are the people who are approaching retirement or reimagining themselves or doing a bit of art or a bit of music or a bit of whatever IT. And effectively, every time that I'm in the college, they're laughing, they're joking, and they're enjoying life. And if you think about it, if you get locked into your house once you retire, because you know, where the hell do I go? The era in which people went off to mass at 10 o'clock and met people for a coffee afterwards seems to have faded away. So how do you get out of your house? You know, doing something, doing a course, anything in which you get to meet people, you get to talk, you make new connectivities, you know, is really, really helpful. So take your time, rinse and repeat. And just to finish up, from a number of people who we've spoken to in our retirement planning processes, the words of wisdom we would take away. One person said, be sure you have colour in your life rather than black and white. You know, life is so rich. We have such an opportunity to have joy in our lives. You know, there will be bad times, there will be dark times, they will come. It happens in everybody's life. But when you have the opportunity, bring that colour into your life. And finally, one person said, I think it is like I'm taking my foot off life's pedal and I've just changed to a different gear.